Nigeria is a melting pot of culture and tradition that speaks volume, and the beauty of our heritage lies in an embodiment of sort, including arts and culture. And versatility is enduring, captivating, and embracing, all combining to effectively give a voice to a creative institution. One area this resonates is the museums and monuments. In 1979, the federal government of Nigeria, with Decree 77, established the National Commission for Museums and Monuments as a replacement for the Federal Antiquities Department to manage the collection, documentation, conservation, and presentation of the national cultural properties to the public for the purposes of education, enlightenment, and entertainment. This decree has now been replaced by the NCMM Act Cap 242 of the Law of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1990. And the national museums are in Abba, Abakaliki, Abeokuta, Akure, Asaba, Bauchi, Benin, Benin Kudu, Calabar, Damaturu, Enugu, Esie, Ibadan, Oko, Ibuku, Ile-Ife, Ilorin, Jos, Kanta, Good day, Prof.
Yeah, good day. You are welcome to the National Commission for Museums and Monuments.
It's a pleasure for me. This is actually my first time of coming here. And of course, when you talk about museum and monuments, it's a special thing to me. So
thank you very much
so much for inviting us to your space.
Thank you.
Already I can see some of our heritage.
Yes.
And that's one thing that we take our pride in.
That's
Nigeria's culture, Nigeria's art.
That's right.
Way of life.
That's
so
right.
just quickly,
right.
Before we begin, actually this is Inspirators on NTA, and we're in the office of Professor Abba Tijanni, the CEO and Director General, National Commission for Monuments and Museums. I'm sure you're going to enjoy every bit of this. I am Ngozi Chude. Welcome to the program. So let's start off. A brief description of this.
Well, this was produced in Kwara State, where we call the ACA. That was ACA. That is where these soft stones, they're actually soft stone carvings that were discovered in ACA.
Okay.
And in fact, the people that came to the place, they were not the ones that made this, but they discovered these soft stones there as a result of, you know, the communities were looking for a place to settle where there is water. So one of the hunters discovered that, you know, the place in ACA has enough water for them to live on.
You know,
so
it's sentimental to me because I grew up in Kwara State.
Right, okay.
I know it's, I've been to it once.
Right.
But I don't really know the story much, or perhaps I can't even remember. But all this, like this now, what is it trying to say?
Well, since we are not able to discover who the actual carvers of these soapstones are, but most of, or almost all the soapstones discovered are seated figures. Seated figures, elaborate, you know, decorations with, you know, headgears, with all these necklaces or probably royal beads or some ritual beads, and also some handbands and so on. So these are probably, we believe, they are figures that are produced for the purpose of worship or for rituals. But although the story was that those are actual human beings that were turned to stone. But then we don't want to go into that story. 19th
century, that's amazing. So let's go to the next one.
And ACA is when these soapstones were discovered, that is where we have the first museum in Nigeria in 1945.
Exactly,
yes.
I remember that one. So let's go to this next one.
This one is a Benin plaque, As you know, the Kingdom of Benin are very famous for, bronze works, and a lot of their, of the bronzes that were produced were for royalty. So they're actually owned by the Abba of Benin. He commissioned this, and so that to be part of their history. So any event, anything that is happening is produced, is their way of keeping calendar of events. And these plaques are actually hanged on the walls as chapters of stories. So every plaque, if you look at it, the next one tells you the next story. So it's like interconnected.
So what's the story? What's this one? What's the story behind this?
Well, this one, we have 2 World Heritage sites in Nigeria.
That's the Osun Osogbo.
This one is the Osun Osogbo World Heritage Site. And as you know, the Osun Osogbo site is also a ritual place for the communities. So every year, there is a ritual performance that takes place, always in August. And next month is going to be the ritual this thing. So they have a lot of sculptures, lot of figurines there that are being worshipped. So during these rituals, and this is the entrance to the ritual shrine. And if you look at the back, you see that the walls have a lot of sculptures that represents their different gods and goddesses. And they perform this ritual as way of welcoming the year and to enable them to prosper and do their activities in the year. So it's a very famous, performance every year that takes place.
Exactly. The Osun is very,
Yes.
Osun Osogbo is a very popular and some kind of sacred.
Yes, it's a sacred grove. Yeah. Yes, it's a sacred grove. And,
I've never been there, but I think one day I should pay a visit there. So let's just take our seats and then we'll continue the conversation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. One thing that speaks well of Nigeria and its culture, its art, is the food. Nigeria's diversity is one that is quite admirable, and of course it's huge, it's large, it's something that we can't actually consume, in a century, if I may say. But it's quite amazing and very shocking for me when I read your profile and I saw studied anthropology and geology. And I just wonder, how could somebody go to the university to study this? That person must be really interested in Nigeria's art. So what's the story for you?
Thank you very much. When actually after my teachers training college, I went to do my National Certificate in Education, NCE, and it was there that I started getting interested in this field, because I majored in fine arts, and at that time my lecturers were actually from abroad. There was a British, there was a Ghanaian, and some other nationalities and Nigerians. So it became interesting for me to come to see that people coming from outside are telling me about my culture, about the art traditions in Nigeria, the Igbo Uku, the Nok, the Ife, the Benin, the Sode, the Afomumwe, and so on. And I was like, what's happening? Where are our Nigerian, teachers, lecturers in this field? Although there were, but not many people that are versatile in this field. So that was how I started, and I said, I must continue in this field because I want to know more about my culture and the culture of other people that I live with.
So for decades now, you've studied Nigeria's culture. What is that singular thing that makes our culture interesting and unique?
Every discovery in Nigeria has its own story, has its own unique features that will amaze anybody. Anybody. If you look, for example, the Ife bronzes, it tells you, like, during that period, how can people have that skills? You know, they are locally trained, and yet they produce naturalistic figures, which, you know, they can identify that this is the figure of this person, this is the figure of that person. So it's really amazing to see the naturalistic aspects of their depictions. And this to me is amazing, because when I studied art history, I looked at Western, art, works, the pre-Renaissance, the Renaissance, the Impressionists and the Post-Impressionists, the Baroque, and so on. And you see the paintings that they are doing, it will amaze you. But for you to come and see that there are artworks that predate these, periods, and they are naturalistic, tells you that, we have such a rich, art tradition in Nigeria.
Professor Abba Tijanni never looks down on tradition and is pleased with history. He is vast with anthropological research, all intended towards preservation and development.
So after that, my NYC, I was employed at the University of Maiduguri as a graduate assistant in the Department of Creative Arts. So I started there, and immediately after 1 year, or less than 1 year, I was invited to Germany as a visiting, student, to say.
Okay, sir. From the time you went into teachers training, from the time you grew up, your time in Abuja, and growing up and going to teachers training, and of course through the university years and your youth service, and till this point, what would you say were your fondest memories while growing up? Were you from a family where everything was handed over to you, or you just carved in it for yourself?
Well, in Manufactory, where I grew up, it's very close to the Lake Chad. It's just by the bank of the Lake Chad, and we have also the River Yobe. So we were very much interested immediately after our, school. We just go out and explore the environment. So we go to the river bank, we go to the lake, side, and there are a lot of fishermen and a lot of Igbo people, because at that time, Igbos were, very industrious, so they go to everywhere they can do business. So we interact with a lot of people around there, and I think one of the interesting thing for me is actually the kind of people around me, the friendship that we developed, and up to today, those that we are in primary school, we are still in contact.
That's a lot. But
yes.
Before we go on, let's take a short break. We'll be right back. The program is still Inspirators on NTA, and my guest is still Professor Abba Tijanni, and we've been talking about the National Commission for Museums and Monuments, and of course, what life has always taught him. We'll be right back. Nigeria's cultural diversity is not in doubt, but what is in doubt is the level of sensitization of monuments and museums in Nigeria. For me, I think there's a little bit of, there's just a little of awareness when it comes to monuments and museums in Nigeria. People actually don't know how many we have. I was confused at some point. I told you 52. Yeah. So I didn't know it's even 54. People actually don't even know that they exist. Now, why is that so? Where is the awareness not? Why is the sensitization low? Let me just say it.
Well, let me just tell you, when I went to the UK for my master's at the University College London, in museum studies, So having, enrolled into museum studies, and of course, one of the things is for us to visit museums and interact with museum staff. And museum staff come to tell us their stories and so on. And then I realized the kind of museums that are out there. Museums are there to serve the public, to attract the public. And how do they do that? They make the environment welcoming. They make their exhibitions interactive. And they have a lot of activities around their exhibitions and their functions. So you can see that this kind of thing will attract audience to the museum. But in Nigeria, our museums are not set up in this way to welcome visitors. Our museums are set up because of the discoveries, in the different regions. And the purpose, the primary purpose, was to preserve these artifacts. So in the preservation, as we are establishing museums, so we now go into the other functions of museums, meaning exhibition for audience to come and see, and so on. So the primary reason for establishing museum at that time was for preservation, so that we keep our objects in a condition that they can stay as long as, yes, for posterity, and so on. So, but the aspect of presentation was not really considered much. So that's why all our museums, or most of our museums, are not purpose-built museums. They are only structures to house the artifacts. So you find that when you come to navigate through the galleries are so narrow, so small, that you don't have the comfort to interact and enjoy the artifacts.
Professor Tijanni's scope and depth speaks loud with achievements in the academic sector as he midwifed and coordinated the joint collaboration ventures between University of Maiduguri and Universities of Hamburg in Germany from 2015 to date. Assuming duty in 2020 as Director General, National Commission for Museums and Monuments, Professor Tijanni knew he had his work cut out for him.
When I took over on the 1st of September 2020, I went around most of the museums to see the state of the museums and how this, and I was really disappointed, to be honest, as a professional in the field. And I thought that this is not how museums should be. Museums should be there to serve the community and the visitors that are coming. And the way the artifacts are presented and the environment were not welcoming. So I took it upon myself and the management of the commission to see that we improve on this situation. And one of our, setback is funding. So we now said, okay, let us just do within what we have. So we now identified museums that need immediate, rehabilitation, and also arrangement of the galleries in a way that it will be more welcoming. So we did 8 museums in the first year. So these 8 museums, we made sure that the galleries were rehabilitated and repainted, and the exhibitions redesigned, new objects brought in. So if you go to these 8 museums in the first year, you are seeing them as if you are outside. So you see the way the objects are displayed, the way the objects are presented, and so the neatness and everything is to international standard. 17 museums that we upgraded to international standard. And this year, we are continuing with additional museums. The Akasa, slave trade is there also. We are upgrading it. And then also our Motna in Jos, we are also upgrading some of our monuments, because that's modernized museum of traditional Nigerian architecture.
So with this upgrade now, what kind of functionality are we going to see?
So
one
now,
for the Nigerian government and one for the people.
Yeah, so now, that is one of the way now to now attract audience, to see that, when they come, they are coming to see exhibitions that are attractive and interactive also. We have some audio visuals that are also accompanying these exhibitions to make sure that when they come, they are not only seeing the objects, but also, some audio visuals and they can interact with. We are also looking towards partnering in different ways to digitize our collections, because that's the other element that will attract our youth as well, because they are always, on their, handsets, laptops, and tablets and the rest. So when we develop a kind of digital database, that will enable us to present our objects in different formats, either online exhibition or some other, interactive sessions in the museums. And we thought that by doing this, it will attract the youth to our museums.
Artifacts hold symbolic, historical, and cultural roots in their creations, and so Nigeria took that bold step in repatriating some of ours recently. A development many have applauded, saying it is a step in making right with the wrongs of the past.
Thank God, when we came, we started negotiating with our partners, and most of them are people that we have been interacting with, the museum directors and so on. So that enabled us to agree on the return of these artifacts. So we are fortunate to now break this barrier, and we are able to agree and achieve this repatriation of these objects. The first one was Germany. In German public museums, that some of them are owned by the federal government, some of them are owned by the regional government and the local authority and the rest. So they all came together, to say, okay, let us work, and on repatriation. So we signed an agreement with the federal government of Germany to repatriate 1,130 Benin bronzes.
Wow, that's a lot that we're going to see in the coming years.
Yes, more repatriations. We need to have, in place museums that are of international standard that will keep these artifacts as well. For us, we don't want to come and keep the artifacts in storage. We want to enable our, audience in Nigeria to see these artifacts that have been away from Nigeria for decades. So we want to build museums that are convenient for these artifacts to be presented, and then our people will be able to see it.
All right, so far 17 museums upgraded, and when are we going to see the completion of it, or when are we going to see the next upgraded? I mean, you're still in office 3 years down the line, and I don't know how many more years to go. Are we going to see the all 54 upgraded?
Absolutely, we are doing it year by year, depending on funding. So this year is already the budget for us to upgrade some, but also we have a line to build new museums.
Museums?
Yes, new museums, because we have to keep expanding. We have in Kano, for example, we have our permanent site, which we want to build, which we want to make it as a museum of Islamic art, because we want to go into specialization now. So most of our museums are, ethnographic in their nature. So they are all historical objects and so on.
I've been talking about museums a lot, and I forget that there's also a zoological garden.
Monuments and also,
monuments. Yes. I've been talking about museums a lot.
Yes.
There's a zoological garden, but just one zoological garden in Nigeria? Is it just one, or we have how many?
No. We have the zoo in Jos, and we also have in Makurdi, a small one, and we are, the aspect of managing a zoo is not an easy thing. You have to feed the animals, you have to do this and that. So whatever you are generating may not be enough to, put into this. So that's why we are very careful in going into so much into this aspect. Let us maintain what we have. And we have so many of our art traditions also that are not properly housed. So that's why we want to build new museums so that our artifacts are properly housed and also presented as well. Also learn from that. So we have so many structures, so many buildings, so many sites that are historical. And many of them are, since we, the national monument, the 65s that were actually declared many, many years ago, most of them are during the colonial period. And today we thought that there are so many that are not identified, so many palaces, so many structures of historical importance, some important events that has taken place, and so on. And we thought that, it is important for us to now enable our communities and our visitors know that these are part of our history, part of our identity. And that is why it is good for any community you go, you have such kind of edifice. And I thought that would be something that one would remember about. And of course, I want to be remembered